Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in today's video I want to talk about 6 things that you thought were hard about the guitar that actually may not be quite as hard as you thought. So that demo that I played in the beginning is exactly what we're going to talk about here in today's video. Just a quick plug, check out my website, zombieguitar.com, if you haven't already seen it. It's my labor of love. I've been working on it for 7 years, 8 years, something like that now. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, so if you check it out, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's get into the lesson. So the first thing is taking a song that consists of mostly power chords or all power chords and then converting those into their respective major and minor chords. So the thing to understand is that power chords, and you're going to see these notated as 5 chords like B5 and D5 and A5 and F sharp 5. That 5, that means power chord. So power chords are representative of major chords and minor chords within the key that they're being played in. Now the way that you determine the key based on this power chord information is you look at the actual root notes of each of the power chords that are being played. So a prerequisite for this lesson is to know the notes on your low E string and on your A string. Knowing the notes on your low E string and on your A string is going to allow you to do all of the stuff that we're going to talk about here in this lesson. You don't necessarily need to know the notes on your upper 4 strings to do this stuff. It would help. The more you know, the better, but it's not required for this lesson. So the power chords that we used in this song was a B power chord, and then a D power chord, and an F sharp power chord, and a G power chord, and an A power chord. So if you look at just the root notes of each of those chords, B, D, F sharp, G, A, and then you turn to your circle of fifths and you look for the grouping of 6 that contains most, if not all, of those root notes together within a grouping of 6, that's going to give you your key information. So turning to the circle of fifths, you can see this grouping of 6 right here has the B, D, F sharp, G, and A in it. So this is going to be our key. So the outer circle center position chord, that gives you the major name of the key. So this would be the key of D major. The inner circle center position, that gives you the minor name of the key. So this key could also be called the key of B minor. So we're in the key of D major, B minor. Now the rest of the chords in this grouping of 6, that tells you whether the chord should be major or minor. So the B power chord is representative of a B minor chord. The D power chord represents a D major chord. The F sharp power chord represents an F sharp minor chord, and then G and A power chords both represent major chords within this key. So using this information, I could then take those power chords and then convert it to an acoustic Campfire version of the same song. So the first chord was a B minor chord. Then we had a D major chord. Then we had an F sharp minor chord. Then we had a G major chord. Then an A major chord. So that is the acoustic Campfire version of that song that we just played. So there's just one thing that I want to point out here, and it's that F sharp minor chord. So anytime you're using your circle of fifths to identify the chords that are found in the key that you're playing in, the chord that's found in the inner circle clockwise position is usually going to be made into a major chord. Not always, but usually. So in this case, the F sharp minor chord has been made into an F sharp major chord. This is now an out of key chord. But it doesn't matter that it's an out of key chord, it just is usually used. It's very, very common. You're going to see this come up all the time. It doesn't matter if it's a major context, it doesn't matter if it's a minor context, it doesn't matter if we're playing purely in the key of D major and there's absolutely nothing that would indicate that this is the key of B minor. You're still going to see that F sharp major chord being used very often in the key of D major. Or if it's in the key of B minor and there's absolutely no indication that this would be the key of D major, again, you're also going to see that F sharp minor chord made into an F sharp major chord. So that became this. So the second thing we're going to do is we're going to take those chords and we're going to convert them into movable major and minor bar chords. So what we just played consisted of a lot of open chords, like the D major chord was an open chord because it contained open strings. The A major chord contained some open strings. The G major chord contained open strings. So a lot of those chords were open. We couldn't play the entire progression using just open chords. We still had to get that B minor chord in there. That was a bar chord. That's a movable bar chord that we're going to be converting all of the chords into. We also had that F sharp major chord. That's a movable bar chord. So depending on the key that you're playing in, sometimes you can get mostly open chords, or the majority of the chords you can turn them into open chords. Some keys you can't do that so much. This key, we were able to get 3 of the chords played as open chords, and then the remaining 2 we had to use movable bar chords. Now we're just going to convert all of them into movable bar chords. So the way you do this is recognizing that there's 2 shapes for the A string and 2 shapes for the low E string. So on the A string, your minor bar chord shape looks like this, and your major bar chord shape looks like this. And then on the low E string, your minor bar chord shape looks like this, and your major bar chord shape looks like this. So knowing the notes on your A string and low E string, you can just plug and play these shapes. So we have a B here, we have the note D here, we have the note F sharp here, we have the note G here, we have the note A here. Of course, you could play these in other places, like there's a B here, there's a G here, there's an F sharp here, there's an A here, there's an F sharp here. So anywhere up and down the low E string or A string, you can just plug and play these shapes. Just make sure to use the A string shapes when you root notes on the A string, and use the low E string shapes when you root notes on the low E string. All right, so let's just quickly do this. So first one is B. That is on the A string. So we're going to look to our A string shapes. B minor. So you take the minor bar chord shape rooted on the low A string, and that's this. So we have our first chord. Our second chord is a D major. There's a D right there that's on the A string. So we're going to look to our A string shapes. So D major, you play that shape right here. So here's your D major chord. And then you have an F sharp major. This one's rooted on the low E string, so you're going to look to your low E string shapes, not the A string shapes anymore. So F sharp major. This is the shape we're going to use for that. We then have a G major rooted on the low E string. We then have an A major rooted on the low E string. Now this third thing is going to make a lot of people happy, because I hear this all the time. People are constantly saying about how hard bar chords are, and they don't have the finger strength to push down on these chords to play these full 6-string bar chord shapes. And if you can't do that, you can still do exactly what we're doing here without having to worry about having the finger strength to push down. The reason is you can always reduce these bar chords to just 4 strings or 3 strings. So you can take the A string shapes that we looked at, the minor shape or the major shape, and you can reduce it to just the high 3 strings. Or you can take the E string bar chord shapes, the low E string bar chord shapes, major or minor, doesn't matter, and you can reduce them to the high 4 strings. So again, for this B minor chord, if this is too hard for you to play, just play the high 3 strings. It's still a B minor chord, you're fine. This D major chord right here, this is a hard one to play. Major chords rooted on the A string, they're hard to play because not only do you have to bar these 3 strings with your third finger, but you also have to somehow figure out a way to get your index finger to play this and the high E string. It's not easy to do. Trying to get that high E string to sound, it's not always super easy to do. So a lot of people have trouble with that one. Again, you can just reduce to the upper 3 strings and you're still playing a D major chord, no problem. And then the rest of the chords were all played using the low E string major chord shapes, so they can all be reduced to the high 4 strings. So instead of playing this chord right here, just play the high 4 strings. Much easier. Instead of playing this chord right here, just play the high 4 strings. Same thing for the A major chord, just high 4 strings. So the fourth thing is playing these chords in their 7th form. So I know this 7th thing is something that a lot of people, as soon as they see a number 7, they immediately run away. They say, nope, too hard for me. I can't do that. I don't know what 7 means. I'm not going to watch this lesson. I'm just done. People do that all the time. Something about these 7ths, I don't know, it scares people. All you need to know is that single notes can then be taken to the next level, which is power chord. And then power chord can be taken to the next level, which is triad. And then triad can be taken to the next level, which is 7th chord. So just like all the power chords that we started out with were representative of major and minor chords, the major and minor chords that we have, which we determined from knowing what key we're in, those are all representative of 7th chords, because that's the next level up. And again, you can use your circle of fifths to know exactly what type of 7th chord each of these major and minor chords gets turned into. So we're going to turn to our circle of fifths. We have our grouping of 6 right here. The 3 chords on the inner circle, they're all minor 7th in their 7th form. The outer circle center position and outer circle counterclockwise position, those become major 7th chords. And then the outer circle clockwise position becomes a dominant 7th chord. This is true for any key. And then you just have that one chord that's in the inner circle clockwise position that we talked about. Since that is no longer being played as a minor chord, we're playing that as a major chord. in 7th form, that would then become a dominant 7th chord. Again, that is an out of key chord. That's just a very common change. It doesn't matter if it's major perspective or minor perspective of the key, you're going to see that chord being used very, very often. You can always turn to your circle of fifths, you can always look at the grouping of 6, and this same information is always going to be true. And now I have a whole lesson about 7th chords if you want to check that one out, if you really want to dive into the subject more. But just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be giving you shapes that are rooted on the A string, just to kind of keep things simple. So for minor 7th chords that are rooted on the A string, they're going to be this shape. For major 7th bar chords rooted on the A string, they're going to have this shape. And then for dominant 7th chords rooted on the A string, they're going to have this shape. So again, you can just plug and play based on the type of 7th chord that it is. So B minor, that's on the inner circle, that becomes a B minor 7 chord. And then you have the D major, that's on the outer circle center position, so that becomes a major 7th chord. And then you have that chord that's in the inner circle clockwise position. If we were to keep it as a minor chord, keep it diatonic to the key, it would become an F sharp minor 7 chord. But we made that change, we made it into a major chord, so it's going to become an F sharp dominant 7th chord. So you're going to apply that shape. And then we have this G major chord that's on the outer circle counterclockwise position, so that becomes a major 7th chord. And then you have the A major chord, which is on the outer circle clockwise position, so that's a dominant 7th chord. So the whole progression in 7th form So the fifth thing is taking this entire chord progression and playing the whole thing in one single position of the fretboard. It doesn't matter. You can play it here or here or here or here or here. It doesn't matter which position, because you can play any chord anywhere on the entire neck of the guitar. It just depends which shape you happen to have available underneath your fingertips in the given location of the fretboard for which you're trying to play the chord in. Yeah, so the cage system is a lot easier than people make it out to be. The internet has confused everyone. And I'm just like, I see the questions that people are asking each other and stuff, and I see the conversations, and I just see all the confusion about the cage system. I'm just like, no, it's so much easier. So much easier. You don't have to dedicate the next 62 years of your life to studying this crazy, complicated cage system. You just spend 5 minutes listening to what I'm about to say right here, and then you know the cage system. It's so easy, guys. It's so easy. So all you have to do is you take the little area of the fretboard that you have chosen to play the entire chord progression in, and I'm just choosing to play it right around this area. Then you just have to find your root notes on either the low E string or the A string in the given area of the fretboard that you're trying to play the chord progression in. So my 5 root notes for the 5 chords in question are B, D, F sharp, G, and A. So I have to find each of those 5 root notes on either the low E string or on the A string. With that information, if the root note location is on the low E string, then you have a G shape or an E shape available to you. If the root note location is on the A string, then you have a C shape or an A shape available to you. And then the D shape is just the top piece of the C shape. And that's it. That's the whole cage system. You can play any chord anywhere on the entire neck of the guitar just by knowing where your root note location is on either the low E string or on the A string, and then just plug and play the correct shapes. And then if it's a minor chord, you just have to do one extra step. You just have to identify where the third is, lower that by a half step, and then you've just converted your major chord into a minor chord. And that's the cage system in a nutshell. I did make 2 much more detailed videos about this recently. One's called Chords on the High Strings, and then one is called the Minor Cage System. Hint, there's no such thing as the minor cage system. There's just the cage system. And you take the chords, the major chords, and then you convert them into minor chords by lowering the third. I explain all that in that video. So if you want more detail about this whole cage stuff, check out those 2 videos. I'll post links to those below as well. But anyway, so let's just plug and play this stuff with that information I just said. So this is the area I chose to play this chord progression in right here. So I need to find a B, a D, an F sharp, a G, and an A on either the low E string or on the A string in this little area of the fretboard. So I'm going to save the B minor chord for last because that's a minor chord and it requires that one additional step. All of the other chords that we played in this progression are major chords, so we don't have to do the additional step of lowering the third in order to turn it into a minor chord. So let's address those chords first. So in this little area, where can we find our root note D? Right there, 10th fret of the low E string. So it's on the low E string. It's not on the A string. It's on the low E string. What does that tell us? That tells us we have a G shape or an E shape available to us. So if I wanted to play a D major chord in the G shape, I could play it like this. I could play something like that. That's a D major chord in the G shape. If I wanted to play a D major chord in the E shape, I could play it like this. So I have those two shapes available to me because my root note location is on the low E string. So you don't have to play these shapes in full if you don't want to. You don't have to play the full G shape like this. Hardly anyone is ever going to play a shape like that. You can just play the high 4 strings. Or with the E shape, you don't have to play the full E shape like that. You can just play the high 4 strings. That's another thing about the cage system. You don't have to play these shapes in full. Everyone's like, oh, the cage system's too hard. I can't play the G shape. I can't play the full D shape. You don't have to. You just play like some of the shape, you know, get the necessary notes in there to get the sound of the chord. You don't have to play the whole shape in full, you know. It's a lot easier than that. So anyway, so we're going with this chord right here. We're going to go with the D major chord in the E shape, and we're just going to play the upper 4 strings. So here's our D major chord. Then we have that F sharp major chord. So we have to find the note F sharp on either the low E string or the A string in the given area that we're trying to play the progression in. So right here, 9th fret, there's the note F sharp. So the root note location is on the A string. So that tells us we have a C shape or an A shape available to us. So an F sharp major chord in the C shape looks like this. F sharp major chord in the A shape looks like this. We're going to go with the A shape. You don't have to play the whole thing in full if you don't want to. We're just going to play the upper 3 strings. The G major chord. Find your note G in this area on either the low E or the A string. There's your G right there, 10th fret. It's on the A string, so we have a C shape and we have an A shape available to us. G major chord in the C shape, G major chord in the A shape. I'm going to choose the A shape again. I'm just going to play the high 3 strings again. There's your G major chord. Now we're going to look at the A major chord. So we need to find the note A on either the low E string or the A string in this area. Here's an A right here, 12th fret. The location is on the A string. We have a C shape and we have an A shape available to us. Here's an A major chord in the C shape. Here's an A major chord in the A shape. I'm going to choose the C shape this time because I want to confine my playing to this little area as much as possible. So here's an A major chord in the C shape. All right, so again, you don't have to play these chords in full. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So when it comes to the C shape, I tend to just play the high 4 strings. I tend to just play it like this. You could even just play the high 3 strings if you want. That's the D shape right there. I mean, if you wanted to play the D shape in full, you have to kind of rearrange your fingers like this and then play something like that. That would be the actual quote-unquote D shape according to the cage system. But that's super hard to play, you know. No one wants to configure their hands like that. That's weird. So you just play the high 3 strings. It's still an A major chord. I just kind of play it like this because it sounds pretty. But it's all coming from the C shape right here. So the last chord is going to be the B minor chord. So we're going to have to identify where a B is on either the low E string or the A string in this little area. So we don't have a B right in this area. We have a B here, which is 7th fret low E string. We have a B here, 14th fret of the A string. So I'm going to go with this one. All right, so our root note location is on the A string. That means we have a C shape and we have an A shape available to us. I'm going to go with the B major chord in the C shape here. So we don't want to be major chord, we want to be minor chord. So in order to take a major chord shape and turn it into a minor chord, you have to identify where the 3rd is. So let's look at this shape in its root 3rd and 5th. So you have a 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. So any instance of where the 3 is, you just lower that to make it a flat 3, and then that's how you get a minor chord. Again, you don't have to play this shape in full. Here would be the B minor. You don't have to play that shape in full. I don't even think that's possible to play that full B minor shape across all 5 strings in full. So we're just going to take the high 3 strings, and here's our B minor chord. So you do have to do that extra step because it's a minor chord, because the cage system is 5 major chord shapes. But any of those 5 major chord shapes, you can just look at them as 1s, 3s, and 5s, their interval breakdown, and then just take the 3, lower it by a half step, boom, now you got a minor chord. And that's the cage system in a nutshell. And then finally, transposing to a new key. So this is something that you may want to do for your singer, or if you happen to be a singer yourself. There's a song, and you can do this to any song, it doesn't matter. We do this all the time in cover bands and stuff like that. The singer can't sing in the original key, like this is in the key of D major or the key of B minor. That may not be in the singer's vocal range, so the singer says, hey, can you play this in the key of C or in the key of A minor? That's much more suited to my vocal range, you know? So we're going to take this song that's in D major / B minor, and we're going to transpose it to C major / A minor. And the way that you can do this, there's a couple different ways you can do this, but we're going to do it with the circle of fifths. So you're just going to look at the chord's positioning within the grouping of 6, and then you're going to use that same positioning within the grouping of 6 for the new key that you're trying to transpose to. So the 5 chords in the chord progression is outer circle center position, inner circle center position, inner circle clockwise position made major, outer circle counterclockwise position, outer circle clockwise position. That's the chord progression that we did. It went in that exact order. So we're going to take that exact order within the grouping of 6 and we're going to move it to our new key. So our new key is the key of C major, which has the relative minor of A minor. You can find your grouping of 6 to give you your chords for that key. The key of C major, the key of A minor has these chords in it. That's all there is to it. We could have moved it to any key we wanted. We just chose to move it to the key of C major / A minor. It doesn't matter which of the keys you choose to move it to. You just use the grouping of 6 on the circle of fifths, and the positioning is always going to be the same within that grouping of 6. So that's it. Those are the 6 things that you may have thought were more difficult than they actually are on the guitar. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. I'll see you next time.